We have Phil here, and I'm going to introduce you guys to Phil. Phil Walker is a strategic, he's Vice President of Strategic Relationships with Finance of America, Reverse Mortgage. He has over 30 years experience in the financial industry. He also worked with as a financial advisor for Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, and Merrill Lynch. He is also the lead author of To Reduce the Risk of Retirement Portfolio Exhaustion, including home equity as a non-correlated asset in the portfolio, which was published in the Journal of Financial Planning in December of 2021. Phil has been recognized as a verified researcher by ResearchGate. Phil is a regular speaker at all the FPA annual conferences and has also been a speaker at NAPFA, FA Magazine's annual retirement symposium, and FPA chapters across the United States. So without further ado, I want Phil to come on board.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm going to dive right into this. I have a pretty large deck here, so I want to cover things as quickly as I can, and so we can get to Q&A, because usually there's a lot of questions about this. All right, so this is called Preparing for the Rebound, a new discovery in risk reduction. And for the people at the Journal of Financial Planning, a lot of the folks that were on the committee that did the peer review on this actually went through 2 complete peer reviews. Some of them were calling this one of the biggest findings in risk reduction since modern portfolio theory of 1952. I'll let you be the judge of that. So what we're going to cover here very quickly is something called the coordinated withdrawal strategy. It is a way to reduce risk by 7 times while increasing portfolio growth significantly at the same time. Now, just for a second on that general concept. Normally, as planners, as financial advisors, when we think of doing something that increases growth, we also assume that we're also increasing risk, usually, right? This is actually the opposite. Significant portfolio growth, significant risk reduction happening at the same time. We're going to cover research results. Reverse mortgage is the last resort versus this coordinated withdrawal strategy. Most financial advisors currently in this country, and this is where the major change is going to come, think that you only use for wealth management clients a reverse mortgage as a last resort. We're going to show you proof that that is actually the worst way to use today's reverse mortgages. So what if you could safely increase a client's withdrawal rate, create significant portfolio growth, and substantially reduce risk at the same time? Is that something that might interest some of you? Probably sounds too good to be true, right? New study shows that a coordinated withdrawal strategy can do all this while reducing the impact of volatile markets by 7 times. And I think market volatility is probably one of the top of mind topics in today's world. So I'm going to start with a statement. No longer is all debt bad in retirement. No longer is all debt bad in retirement. We have been programmed, and rightfully so, myself included, as I started off back in the day at Merrill when we would do our own financial plans. We didn't, farm it off to another department or something like that and just collect the data and see what the plan came back looking like. We actually did our own plans. And I was totally on board. You should be debt-free in retirement. Absolutely. This study changes that. Now, is it ideal to be debt-free? Absolutely. Of course it's ideal to be debt-free. It'd be crazy not to say that. It's also ideal to have $200 million in the bank, right? Wouldn't that be ideal also? So what we're going to talk about is a very specific group of clients, the mass affluent. That's people with roughly $500,000 to $2 million in investable assets. What we're talking about is a paradigm shift, a different way to think about debt in retirement. And when you think about what a paradigm shift truly is, it requires that we think differently about something that we previously thought we really knew. Now, to set this up, I want to refer to this guy, Max Planck. Pretty smart guy. He invented a little thing called quantum theory, right? Matter of fact, Max Planck is just all over textbooks in the physics world. He's probably one of the most famous physicists of all time because he made so many discoveries. He made so many discoveries, and introduced his realm into thinking differently about things so many times that he made this statement: a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up familiar with it. So I want to go back to what I opened with. Dramatic portfolio growth, dramatic risk reduction at the same time. There are millions and millions of retirees that need to put in place this withdrawal strategy we're going to talk about today. And it's so ridiculously simple, by the way. It's incredibly simple. You're going to wonder, why did nobody ever think of it? It's not nobody ever thought of it. It's the fact that we refuse to go down the debt path. And that's what's inhibited people from engaging this. So how big is this market that we're talking about? If you compare our market to 401ks and IRAs, and I'm talking specifically about retiree home equity, there's roughly 7.3 trillion in 401ks, almost 20 trillion in IRAs, and over $11 trillion in retiree home equity, the vast majority of which is not being properly used in retirement planning. So we're going to talk about two studies today. The most recent one was the December issue of the Journal of Financial Planning. You can see we had a cover mention there on there. Also, this study got a mention a couple months ago in the New York Times, and the title was "Reverse Mortgages Are No Longer Just for Homeowners Short on Cash." This withdrawal strategy is so powerful that in the initial study where they discovered it, they decided to illustrate it against a worst case scenario, against a sequence of returns risk scenario of consecutive down early markets. And you can basically, we're going to analyze it against that, which is something we very much could be looking at right now. As a matter of fact, in the past 30 days, I have hosted meetings with senior executives from two of the largest wealth management firms in the world with trillions under management. And they said the same thing. We're looking at a 2-year recession. That's what they're planning on right now. 2-year recession, okay? So this is very real what we're talking about right now. So we're going to illustrate it against the possibility of something really bad like that. For those of you not familiar, sequence of returns risk looks like this in a retirement plan. Think of your journey in retirement like a plane flight. When sequence of returns risk happens, it's like finding out you don't have enough fuel shortly after takeoff. So you start in retirement, and the plan looks like you've got plenty of money to make it through life expectancy, and then consecutive down markets hit you at the beginning of retirement. It's like you started that journey with far less money. So we're going to use that 53,000 as an income number from the portfolio that they're going to count on initially. And we're going to use a really low inflation rate, only 3.5%, right? Just adjust accordingly. It still works with higher inflation, I promise. As a matter of fact, it's even more important now. And they're going to start retirement with 27,000 in combined Social Security income, right? So all they've got is portfolio income, Social Security income. Now here's their entire life in retirement. And they retire at age 62. If you look in the, that laser work? No, okay. They retire at age 62 in the upper left-hand corner, 1973. And the reason they use these market years is because pretty much everyone that retired in 1973 experienced a major sequence of returns risk problem, consecutive down markets. Draws on the portfolio is the next column. Draws on the reverse mortgage, it's referred to as the HECM, the home equity conversion mortgage. That's the FHA version of the product. Draws on the HECM in the next column. Portfolio value at the start of each year is the next column, right? And the reason that's 374 is because they took 26,000 out on day one to live off of, right? So the market only had 374 to work with. And then the next column is portfolio performance as a percentage, portfolio performance as a dollar amount. And then we've got portfolio value at the end of each year, an important number for the strategy. And then what the assets under management fee would look like, it was a flat 1%. We just used 1% so that you could easily calculate the impact on revenue, okay? So they're gonna use reverse mortgage as a last resort, which means they're not gonna touch the reverse mortgage known here as the HECM until they don't have a choice, right? Last resort. They wait until the portfolio is completely exhausted, And now they're going to live off of home equity for their remaining years. Well, at least they have the option to do that, right? They had something to live off of. But what's the result of that strategy? It was the last resort. Portfolio value is exhausted after 25.2 years. Portfolio value is zero. They're no longer a wealth management client. The fees collected by the advisor and the firm over the life of the relationship, about $83,000. Okay. Now, what is this new strategy? Step one, establish the reverse mortgage line of credit, ideally prior to the first day of retirement, ideally. Does it have to be at the beginning of retirement only? No, well, I'll show you data that we did from the recent study that says you can engage this later in retirement and still have substantial benefit. Okay, but ideally, best case scenario, going into retirement. Next step, evaluate portfolio performance at the end of each year. Something we automatically do anyways, right? We simply say, was it up or was it down? If it was up, then we're going to take the next annual draw from the portfolio. We're going to continue drawing on the portfolio. But in the occasional year the market's down, we're going to give the portfolio a break for a year and draw from the home equity instead via the tool of the reverse mortgage. Okay, all we're doing, it seems incidental on the surface, but all we're doing is leaving as much money as possible in the portfolio to benefit from the rebound that's coming. Because what always comes? Over 200 years of markets, the rebound always eventually comes. Maybe not right away the next year, normally it does, but usually within 2 or 3 years, right? So we're just preparing for the rebound, and the power is in the compounding effect, right? We were taught early on in our careers, put compounding interest into your favor. What's the one reason we want to do that? Because on the other side of the coin, we have compounding inflation working against us, right? So you got to have compounding interest working in your favor. Now we're going to put the power of compounding into the retirement plan through a withdrawal strategy. So here's the same couple. They take out their $26,000 on day one, just like before. 12 months go by. The portfolio's down. So what do we do now? For draw two, for year two, we're going to give the portfolio a break, take it from the home equity. Same thing happens the next year. Market's down again. So we take another draw from the home equity. Year three, the market's rebounding. It's coming back. So we're back to drawing on the portfolio again. And we just keep drawing on it and drawing on it until there's another down market. Even in the slightly up years, we just keep drawing on that portfolio. There's another down market here, another one towards the end of retirement. In total, they only take 4 draws from their home equity. Just 4. They take 26 draws from the portfolio. That's still the workhorse. But look at the difference in outcome. Instead of running out of money in their 80s, they leave over $1 million portfolio to their heirs. We're not talking about a little bit of difference in outcome. This is a huge difference in outcome for this client, right? Huge difference in outcome. 0 or $1 million, right? We're not talking about a 10, 20% bump or anything like that. This is a big, big difference. So what's our outcome of this strategy? Portfolio success. It's more than doubled over the life of the relationship. And the fees, 2.5 times revenue to the firm and the advisor, because the portfolio grew instead of going to 0. Easy math. So here's the net. Okay, what was the cost of doing this? So HECM is the last resort. On the left here, there we go. HECM is the last resort. We got 0 portfolio versus $1 million portfolio. We did an estimated home value appreciation of just 3%. So if you think your market is going to do something different over time, on average, just factor that in. But so we could calculate the net benefit to the estate. So they borrowed $399,000 in total. That's the payoff of the reverse mortgage as the last resort strategy versus only $344,000. They actually borrowed a little less because they took fewer draws over here. Net $802,000. HECM is the last resort strategy of home equity only left to the heirs versus $1.878 million total estate left to the heirs with the coordinated withdrawal strategy. And then, of course, the impact on the advisor fee. Pretty significant. Now, what about RMDs? Inevitably, I'm asked, Phil, what happens when I have to take the draw from the portfolio, right? Well, it's very simple, just an extra step. In the occasional year where you take the income from the reverse mortgage, you're going to take that RMD and simply deposit it into a mirrored taxable account, okay? So that the money stays invested. And yes, there's some minor tax consequences on that little bit of money that's in that account, but you're just keeping the money invested so that it benefits from the rebound. So where does this fall into some fundamentals in risk reduction that we already do? Applying asset allocation. We do this because we can reduce risk, and if we do it right, get the same reward, right? So if we aren't doing asset allocation, the regulators think that we're taking on unnecessary risk, right? Why wouldn't you asset allocate? And then we take those assets and we start parsing those out, right? We take the stocks and we put some in industrial and some in tech and some in foreign and some in domestic and so forth. And we spread that around. Why? Same reason. We reduce risk further and maintain our reward. Now we have a third leg to the risk reduction stool where we can reduce risk even further and substantially, and actually increase the gains substantially, right? So now there is a third step. You don't have to make any changes to the portfolio. You don't have to make any changes to your investments. You don't have to make any changes to the retirement plan at all. Simply add a withdrawal strategy. Now, in the study, we looked at what kind of risk does it reduce? How much does it reduce it? What it essentially does is yank the impact of volatile markets out of the retirement plan. Yanks the impact of down market years. We haven't seen a lot of those recently, but everyone's pretty confident that we're in for it right now, right? So ideally, clients should be preparing, taking out their reverse mortgages right now, putting them in place so they can take their first draw in January, because they're probably looking at this being the first down market year. In the study, we measured this. It was a 7x reduction in risk. That is a huge, huge impact to the point that this will most likely in the next couple of years show up in your compliance training and things like that, because they'll want you evaluating clients for this particular strategy. So what have you heard about reverse mortgages? What I want to do just very quickly is deal with some of the most common misconceptions, because this is probably the most misunderstood financial tool in the United States today. It's second, if only, to annuities, right? There's a lot of misconceptions about that product also. So one of the first ones is that they are for desperate seniors, for the house rich but cash poor. Let me tell you where this comes from. For the first 3 decades, there was something called a reverse mortgage in the United States. And this is the 60s, 70s, and 80s. 3 decades. It was exclusively for these folks. It was absolutely a product of last resort. You didn't want to go down this road unless you had absolutely no choice to save your home and have a place to live, right? That's what those reverse mortgages were for. In the late 80s, they went away. They completely went away. And FHA in the early 90s came out with the beginning of the product that we have today called the HECM, the Home Equity Conversion Mortgage. Notice they didn't put the word reverse in the title because it is an entirely different product. But when they rolled it out, people said, what's FHA doing? And they said, oh, well, it's for seniors and you don't have to make a mortgage payment. You can actually get money out of your house. And they went, oh, that's a reverse mortgage. And that was the only thing it had in common with the previous product. But what it was designed for was to give seniors a tool to incorporate that housing wealth efficiently into their retirement plan. So next one, the bank owns your home. This also comes from those early reverse mortgages, but wasn't technically true then either, but it felt like it to some of the heirs because there was no secondary market for a reverse back then. You couldn't securitize these loans into pools and reduce risk for the lenders. And so the only way the lenders could reduce risk was by having high fees, high interest rates. And when the payoff came along, they took most of the equity in the home. So heirs, in that situation might have felt like, gosh, here's all this home equity I thought we were going to inherit. And they got like 5-10% of it was all something like that, right? So they kind of felt, ripped off to a little bit. Again, that product hasn't existed for a couple of decades now, but the misconception still hangs around. Today's reverse mortgage is like any other mortgage. The interest gets paid off, the lender gets paid off just what they're owed, and all the remaining equity goes to the heirs. And then you should only consider a reverse mortgage as a last resort. Well, as we just showed you, that was the worst way to use a reverse mortgage. So what's happening right now to our retirees? Their income is getting short squeezed. If you think of the concept of a short squeeze, it's literally happening to their income right now. Their income is going down 4 to 20%, depending on how they're invested. At the same time, inflation is way up, making everything more expensive. So they are literally getting short squeezed. So how do you answer that? We talked for years about the 4% withdrawal rate, right? And more recently, the last couple of years, you've probably seen articles where people are arguing, they're going, yeah, that really isn't for everybody. And with longevity, maybe it should be closer to 3%. Well, going 4 to 3% doesn't sound too bad, does it? Until you realize that's a 25% reduction in income. Going from 4 to 3% is a 25% reduction in income. I would think most of our clients wouldn't love to do that right now, right? To have a safer withdrawal rate. So what I wanted to point out to you is something you may not realize when I showed you this illustration. We had that success with a 6.5% withdrawal rate, which means that if you are employing this withdrawal strategy, you can actually safely increase the withdrawal rate a little bit to compensate for what's hitting them temporarily in hyperinflation. You can safely give them a little bit more money right now. It's just math, folks. I know it's like, what? No, 4 is the maximum. We can't go above 4. Yes, you can. You actually can. So here, if you want to grab a copy of the December issue, that is on the left. If you want the article I wrote about it that was published in Advisor Perspectives a few months ago, that is on the right. You can just grab those with your phone and then download the study. I encourage you to pass this along to your compliance and your planning departments, because most likely they have not heard about it yet. They probably saw the December issue and went, oh, something about reverse mortgages, and blew it off, right? But this is important to pass along to your compliance and your planning people. Get it up to the highest level, because there are millions of seniors that need this right now.